sacred code is supernatural and cosmic. It bridges starseed origins, galactic contact, and remembrance. DNA activation, soul memory, psychic development, intuition, timeline shifting, and manifestation. Ancient wisdom, modern consciousness, and real world embodiment. It's where the supernatural becomes natural again. It's not fantasy, not an escape, but as a powerful tool to be used, as a powerful truth to be understood. The reason you are called here is not because you're here to follow, you're here to remember who you are. Your soul carries a code. This space simply helps you unlock them safely, clearly, and powerfully. You're not broken, and you're not late. You're not imagining it, you're remembering. Welcome to the Sacred Code.
I love that. So we're really excited tonight, everybody. Welcome to the Sacred Code, or this afternoon. I'm so used to doing night shows. Good to see everybody. So I just want to do a really brief bio on our handsome guest that I'm so excited to see because it's been too long. So everybody knows Bill Konkolesky is the state director of the Michigan MUFON since 2004. That's a long time. After a lifetime of his own unexplained experiences, Bill dedicated his work to understanding the deeper mysteries surrounding extraterrestrial contact. His research and personal journey have been featured in multiple television documentaries and specials. And he has documented his journey through his books, Experiencer, Raised in Two Worlds, and Experiencer 2, Two Worlds Collide, where he shares his personal encounters and decades of investigative work into the UFO phenomenon. And hey, welcome, Bill.
Hey.
Yeah.
Woo.
That's a short bio on you, and it's still very impressive.
Thank you. Yep.
So,
comes with no sleep.
I totally get that because, I happen to know that you burn both ends of the candle at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're always doing stuff. And on top of it, you work full time.
Yep.
And have a family.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoying the pleasure of having a daughter do her driving after her driver's training. So I got to sit with her for 50 hours to have her get her license.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
That's not nerve-wracking.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's probably a lot of, Dad, let's go for a ride. Right? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you're thinking, I don't have time for this, but I know you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much going on in the UFO community. All of this talk of disclosure and everything else. I know Mary was like ready to get you on here because this is a hot topic right now. So where do we even begin to talk about this?
If you're talking about the release of the UAP files, as the Muggles call them, UAPs. The good news is that stuff is coming out and that there's conversation about it. And now that there's been two, you can look and see that there's a pattern. Okay, this is the type of stuff that they're going to release and keep releasing. And it's going to be a mixed bag of some good stuff, some stuff that's already been resolved, and why did they release it? Some stuff that looks like they just cleared out a desk drawer or their attic and said, here's some stuff, let's put this out. And it's interesting in that both the first and the second, there were astronaut cases that they talked about. So that's intriguing. When I'm asked to discuss this subject, it's often in a situation where I need to be guarded against conspiracy, possible thoughts of hyperbole, and all that stuff. I just need to generally be guarded. So I'm just gonna come out and say something I don't get to say most of the time that I'm asked this question. Is that if you're familiar with that whole sort of idea of Project Bluebeam, um, that the government will say, "Oh my gosh, look, UFOs seem to be real. We don't know what they are, so we need $10 trillion in the defense budget next year." And so I am concerned that this is an excuse to drum up the defense budget and make people scared of anything in the sky as a form of control. But I don't know. It's still early in the process, but I think if somebody's doing this to play the long game, you have to ask what the long game is. Is it because they have it deep in their heart that they want us to accept that we're not alone and have a feeling of universal love and acceptance and broaden our minds, or is it for control? So I'm a bit concerned.
I'm totally on the same page as you are,
Mhm.
and get what you're saying. I mean, that's a huge fear that this is all being done for the wrong reasons, and
And
we're
even
not
even if it is a threat, they're not able to do anything about this level of technology gap.
right, right. But at the same time, I know I feel, and you kind of voice the same thing, though. At least they're bringing it up, and people are talking about it, and people are looking to the skies and becoming more aware.
Mhm.
So there is that.
They're asking the right questions.
Yeah, I just wonder when in this whatever next batch of reports or 100 from now, if they keep this going, what happens when one of them says that we have bodies and craft in storage? Or would they ever throw in a contact encounter? So I don't know. That would be seismic.
It would. It would. And at this point, I think they're just giving us enough to say that they're digging into it.
Mm-hmm. Like a CYA thing, because everybody at one point when something that will happen that's undeniable, everyone's going to look to the government and say, "You knew about this, didn't you? You weren't telling us about this, were you?" And they'd be like, "Look, we've been putting out these reports for years." I notice it's a weird thing that whole arrow as an anomalous aerospace anomalous research organization, whatever, the Pentagon, that the Pentagon was supposed to put out a report last year and didn't. And when this came out, this looks just like the Pentagon reports, but like, well, whatever happened to that Pentagon group and what happened to those reports? I'm confused. It's as if this took over from that, but without any sort of announcement that that's the case. Is the Pentagon going to continue to independently put out stuff like they're, I guess, supposed to, based upon their charter or the way they were funded through Congress? I don't know. It's confusing to me. And if it's confusing to me, and I've got my ear to the ground, I don't know how most people make the slightest sense of it.
I
True
don't
that.
know either. And I don't think we are.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that, as MUFON, the director of MUFON, you deal with contactees, experiencers. You guys get reports all the time that are pretty compelling. Some are not.
Mhm.
So, I have to think if MUFON gets these kinds of reports, what is the government getting?
Mhm.
And if you compare that to what they're putting out, that's why I say they're just putting out enough to make people curious and a little more aware. But how do you feel about that? Do you think they're getting the same kind of information that, even us doing voices of contact, some of these experiencers have had very, some physical evidence and all kinds of stuff. Do you think the government's getting that too?
Yeah. So, boy, that is such a question. So I do
Right.
believe
Sorry.
I do believe that they see this stuff. I also think that is the last thing they want to say, to report that that is happening, because that means that things are really way beyond their control. It's one thing that some unknown whatever it is has violated our airspace. It's another that entities have violated, we'll use that word, that they would, people's homes, and have taken people, have physically affected people. And you could imagine the creative litigation that would trigger if the government somehow put a rubber stamp saying this is a real phenomenon. And so then, like, for example, are they going to start selling abduction insurance? Just as a weird thing. Like,
Never
say,
thought of that.
That's a good,
say,
yeah, that's a
say,
good angle.
like, say, like, Linda Napolitano, a famous case where she was lifted out of her apartment in Brooklyn, in the modern environment. If this was proven to be a real phenomena, could she sue her landlord for not having an alien proof apartment? Or I don't know. Just in interesting directions, it will certainly go. I remember it was right when the not abduction reports, the Pentagon reports were starting to come out. My friend Manuel Lamroy, who runs Jar Magazine, he asked me the question. He goes, do you think this release of UFO files that they're doing is helping the visibility, the cause of the abduction phenomena? And when he asked that, I knew he knew what my answer would be, which was the same as him, which was that it set the abduction phenomena research back quite a ways. Because, say, back in the early 80s to early 90s, mid 90s, there was sort of a golden age for experiencer contact, abduction, whatever phenomena. You had folks like Whitley Strieber, Bud Hopkins, John Mack, and you go on with other great names, and so I just pick on them for starters. But the abduction phenomena was out in front and center, and people were talking about that, and there were tons of accounts being made public. It was a big deal, and then things kind of faded. And then when, say, the Pentagon era showed up and they started releasing these files that were not at all anywhere near the abduction phenomena. Those who were on the sidelines of the phenomena, or just a little bit curious, but not really curious, they now had a bone to chew on. Oh, wow, look at this bright light that was seen flying over the ocean near the Middle East, and they sink into that, and they, then any thought of abductions is out of the picture now, where it used to be sort of part of the conversation. Now the government is saying what's real and what's not, as if they have the authority, and they're pointing everybody towards a direction of strange, blurry, fuzzy videos, nondescript, of things in other parts of the world, where you look at them and say, I'm not really sure what I'm looking at, but I guess I take their advantage, their word for it, while they're taking advantage of us. So yeah, I think that has created this whole modern environment, for the time being, has created a distraction from the contact side of things. Though That doesn't mean that people will independently at the grassroots level, after a while, after they've seen thousands a blurry video of a little white dot, say, "Is there anything more to this phenomena?" "Oh yeah," and then suddenly the contact phenomena has a resurgence, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know now that they let that sort of genie out of the bottle, if they would be able to stop it from going to that point. And another interesting thing that could come up, if you could imagine this, say UFOs are seen to be real in public mindset, in the from the government, from the military, they're saying this is real, and then suddenly the Bigfoot people step in and say, "Okay, it's Bigfoot's turn. All right." And then they start pressing the government to say Bigfoot is real. And then ghosts, ghosts are real. Can you imagine that in Congress debating whether ghosts are real? And then like every couple weeks there would be a release of ghost files.
Right. And when you put it that way, my mind goes right to that's not their place. But is it their place to tell us that UFOs are real, that extraterrestrials are real, that they're the only ones some people will believe, but is it their place? How do you guys feel?
I like the fact that it makes people more open-minded. The ones that would judge would be like, oh, because the government says it's real, then it is, right? So I like the idea that it expands the opportunity to, I guess, get out of your comfort zone and realize there's more out there. But I think it's never going to replace people like Bill who have shared their experiences. There's nothing compared to it. They haven't touched anything until they've actually talked to people who have had a lifetime of some kind of experience. They haven't even touched a smidgen, and they know it. They know it. They're giving this sheep what they want. That's my opinion.
Right.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So what if, like, you've got my brain going now down this rabbit hole of, okay, so then we're going to have UFO insurance and abduction insurance and stuff.
By the way, everything that you were saying about that, I was giggling because it's hands down so true. Like, like you were saying, like as soon as you open that door, it's like there's so many other things that come with it, and I didn't really think of any of that stuff, so that's why that was pretty fun.
Right.
Anti-abduction spray,
There you go. But what I would like to see, and I know the government wouldn't get behind it, but I would like to see the possibility of people getting help afterwards. A normal thing. I know, I was quite traumatized. Bill, you helped me a lot. We didn't talk a lot, but you said some things that really did help me.
Thank you.
But wouldn't it be wonderful if this became something where people knew, oh, I can go to this place or this place. I know, there are organizations, even MUFON, that are wonderful, but there's still a lot of stigma with people even reporting to MUFON, let alone turning to MUFON to get help. And I'd like to see that stigma just taken away and make it so we have support groups, we have places to turn, because it's needed. We're seeing more and more and more experiencers that are coming out of the woodwork, but they need a place to go, people to talk to.
Maybe that's I'm sorry, go on.
And within the professional community, there's still a lot of folks that are seeing this as a mental illness. I actually have a close friend. I've been good friends with her for 30 some years, saw her last week, and she's sure that all abductions are hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, going into sleep, coming out of sleep. And I'm like, I can tell you all sorts of stuff. And she's like, no. She's like, I'm. She goes, I'm not interested in, quibbling about the small stuff or whatever. I'm like, okay, she just doesn't want to hear about it. But what happens when somebody comes to her and she has a professional obligation to listen to them, and they're saying things that are far outside. I was with my friend in the daytime and we were driving. Where's the sleep hallucination there?
Right.
So, and another thing I think that there's going to be a challenge with bringing the experiencers into the conversation is there's always this factor that goes on. Say, you see this black triangle in the sky and it stops overhead suddenly and it hovers and then it shoots off at an immense speed. And you tell people about it. People will ask you the question, oh, how did it do that? And you say, I don't know. I don't know anything about that. And they're like, where's it from? I don't know. And there's this expectation that if you're telling somebody about something, you know how it works. You know what's going on. And you're just like, I have no idea. I'm just telling you what I saw. I'm not an expert. I'm not even, you could say I'm not even interested in the subject, which you hear sometimes. I'm just telling you this is what I saw. You know as much as I do, and I was the one who was there, and I saw whatever. So I think that would even get amplified with the experiencer community. Where are they from? Why did they do this? You say they did an experiment on you. Can you be more specific? When the last thing you want to do is be more specific about something invasive and deeply personal that happened to you. And then why did they do that? And you're like, I don't know. I'm just telling you, I have no idea. And you would need that sort of authority, professional person to listen without judgment and understand that you're not driving this, you're having this happen to you, and handle it gently from there. It would, if you think of, and this is an awkward analogy possibly, and I don't see the two phenomena being that particularly close, but imagine people coming back from a combat tour, and then people are asking, why do you feel this way? And they're deeply curious, but not necessarily compassionate. And you're just like, why? And it is very true of the abduction, contact, whatever phenomena. People are like, why do I even want to share if this is the feedback that I'm going to get? And then they go to find anybody who will listen to them, whether that person is knowledgeable, whether that person's compassionate, and then it just, everything gets so muddled. All right.
Yeah, it really does. And this is why we need help for support for fellow experiencers. Yeah, it's quite the topic.
So do you know if any of the files that were released were from Michigan at all?
Yes. So in the first batch of files, there was a report from, well, I think it was 1958, where a group called the Detroit Flying Saucer Club said that they saw a disc with some sort of crystal pyramid thing on the top. And they reported it to the FBI, interestingly. So while I was not directly, it was before my time. I'll just put it that way. But there were a couple groups in Michigan. There was, besides them, there was the Michigan Metaphysical Society. And they both were groups of channelers. They were trance mediums that in either case, they were interested in UFOs or anything else seen as paranormal. they would collect people's cases, they would document them, things that they saw themselves, they would report onto the authorities, and then they would record themselves in their channeling sessions as well. And so I was good friends with a guy after the Detroit Flying Saucer Club had already wrapped, and it was towards the end of the Michigan Metaphysical Society. A friend of mine out of that group, older guy, obviously he was Victor Kacharik was his name, and he gave me several of the materials from the Michigan Metaphysical Society, which includes over 100 reel-to-reels of people channeling. And so I had to get a reel-to-reel player, and so that was interesting listening to some of these. And so I go to a gentleman you may have heard of, John Tenney, and I tell him, hey, I've got like 100 reels of channeling, and you know what his response was? You too? Like, you just can't beat this guy, right? so anyway, so yeah, we made a joke that we should like get together, play music, put some of the tracks to music. So that never quite happened, but yeah, so that was in. I'm going way off on a tangent. So that Detroit Flying Saucer Club was in the first batch. So in the second batch, Michigan got a mention again with the balloon from a few years ago, February 2023, when the balloon was shot down over Lake Huron, and they provided video this time of it. It was talked about before, but now there's video for whatever reason. And I think that's a very strange thing to put in the report, because nobody ever thought it was anything other than a balloon. And when it was first spotted, in fact, it was over Montana. Then it drifted out, east over the Dakotas, over Minnesota, Wisconsin, Lake Michigan itself. And then when it was over Lake Huron, almost to the point, right on the verge of drifting into Canada, that's when they shot it down. They didn't shoot it down until it was about to go into Canada. And the way they used 2 Sidewinder missiles to take it down, and they missed the first time, but the second time hit. And these missiles cost about $500,000 a pop. So they spent $1 million to take this thing down. And, I've been asked a question, do I think it was possibly extraterrestrial? I'm like, well, it was moving as fast as the wind. If extraterrestrials are using the power of wind to get to our planet, we're never going to see. We're never going to see life. Yeah. And so I'm like, it was very clearly in there. Like, well, maybe it belonged to some, foreign actor. And I'm like, well, if they thought that it was doing something it shouldn't, I'm sure there were plenty of places in Montana where they could have taken it down without issue, that they had to wait until it was over the lake. Just really strange. And why take it down at all? And what it would have been like easier? They just could have flown the plane into it or something to take it down. Open a window, thrown a rock at it. Rather than and spend $1 million firing these 2 missiles at it. And then it shows up in this report. Like, that is so strange. And in the first batch of reports, there was a flare and it had a parachute attached to it, one of the videos. And you look and you totally see the parachute, and you're just like, why did they release this as an unresolved case?
Right.
I don't know. I've never heard of a UFO with a parachute on it before. But I don't know. Maybe
a firework one.
Yeah.
That really does not make sense at all. And I would love to see all those reels.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so a strange thing about them. Okay, so I didn't know how. It's as if they're not interesting enough. So I didn't know how reel-to-reel tapes worked And so, for the benefit of some who might not have been around for reel to reels, as in probably everybody but Deb, God bless you. But so
Thanks, Bill. I was born in 58, by the way.
So you know what I'm talking about, Deb, in that there's like two channels. There's a left and a right channel. Consider it like stereo. And if you record something and the dial is straight down the middle, there's a dial where you can dial it all the way to the left or all the way to the right for output. So if you record, you turn it all the way to the right and you record input only on the right side. Then when you play it back, only if you have the dial turned all the way to the right side do you hear anything. If it's in the center, you maybe hear it faintly. And if you turn it to the left, you don't hear it at all, and vice versa. So very strange thing to do. So usually, like if to get stereo, if you play something straight down the middle, you get sound out of both speakers. But they worked on a shoestring budget, obviously. And so what they would do is they would turn the dial all the way to the left, record one person channeling, then put in the same side of the tape, same side, turn it all the way to the right, and then record another person. And then if you put it in the middle, then if you play it in the middle, you hear sort of two channelers going, kind of like a cosmic rap battle. Yeah.
Now I want to see these even more.
I think it can happen.
I can see why in the very beginning when you mentioned that, using that with your friend, like listening to music and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So
Makes sense. I've never used one of those before when you're describing it. I've heard of it, but I never knew that that's how it worked.
And there's an evolution if you are patient enough with listening to these, because they're soft spoken. They often take a long time to get the message out. But I noticed with some of the earlier ones and some of the later ones, the way they talked about who they were receiving was different. At some point, you would, especially early on, they were talking about archangels even, and then you would get some moved into the phase where they said they were talking to people from Venus and Mars. So you could see sort of a progression and evolution over the decades. But the thing is, there's so many of them. It's a lot to even to think about, to sit down and try to listen to them. And they're mostly good messages. Be good to each other. The universe is a friendly place. Be nice to the planet. That sort of a thing.
Kind of the same things that we're hearing now,
Mm-hmm.
even from people that are regressed, right, Mary?
Yeah, the message hasn't changed much.
Mm-hmm.
We just all gotta get on board and start doing it.
Right.
Okay, you can record all the way to the right, and I'll record all the way to the left, and we'll see how it sounds when we blend it.
Crazy. So, Bill, you've been a director at MUFON since 2004. Blows my mind. So you've seen literally hundreds, thousands of cases come through.
Thousands, yeah, sure.
A rough guess. How many do you? I mean, I know that there's, false stuff being turned in and all of that. How many do you think are really, really credible? Maybe a percentage.
10%, which is a very small amount. Some people, when they report stuff to us, are sincere that they want to know what it is that they saw. And some people approach us wanting validation for something that is marginally interesting, and they want us to put a stamp on it and say it's credible. And we don't necessarily do that if it's not. And of course, people see all sorts of things, from Starlink satellites now to any type of aircraft, drones, sky lanterns, Chinese lanterns, Somebody a few years back reported Venus to me and wondered if it was a UFO. Um, but then you get the ones that are just like flat out like amazing. And when I started to do research on my talk for the MUFON Symposium this year, one of the thing I really wanted to do was the 1994, March 8th, 1994 event, where there were over 300 witnesses, over 60 people called 911. The same number, you got a home intruder or you've fallen and you can't get up. And then, they're calling 911 about their sighting. So they're really deeply impressed about it. There was, you could say, an epicenter in the Grand Rapids area, Holland, Muskegon, Grand Haven, just it's all over the west coast of the state. And so I knew a little bit about it, and I knew Jack Bushong by the time I started putting this together. And when I've started, I have lots of UFO files, obviously. So I finally located a real treasure trove of reports from March 8th, 1994. And it is mind blowing. It is so crazy, some of the stuff. This one guy, and I talked to him, he was at the event in Troy, the swamp gas conference. He was telling me on that night he saw a rectangle craft so big, he goes, it was probably at least a mile wide. And a truck driver so Holly Graves, who was a central sort of witness, she got a lot of attention. She put me in touch with some of the other people that she knew had some really big things. And one was a truck driver who saw a disc fly in front of his car. It was his truck, 18-wheeler, that was so big he couldn't see all of it at one time when it passed by. There was a gentleman who has been painting UFOs ever since the event. Sort of calls to mind kind of like Close Encounters, like, make Devil's Tower out of the mashed potatoes kind of a thing. But though in a serious, and I guess he's kind of good at it, but I haven't seen his art yet. And then the fact that it was all over the state. And the very earliest report was over this place called Houghton Lake. Yeah. So
I know where that's at. We'll all be here together in September.
But then it was all over the state, and it included strange stuff like if this one was even covered in when Unsolved Mysteries covered the case. UFO out over Lake Michigan sucking up water out of the lake. A swarm of UFOs appearing over the only part of Lake Michigan where there was liquid water when the rest of the lake was frozen over. And there were a couple odd cases from the Flint area, like really weird ones. And one of them included entities. So it's just, I'm putting it together in the best possible timeline, because I really think that this is one of the greats. When people talk about, tell me about a big event, you say like, oh, okay, like Phoenix Lights. People saw a string of lights for a long time, and it's not even really the good stuff. The good stuff was people that were seeing these boomerang shaped craft that night. And you talk, like Stephenville, a lot of the other ones, but the only thing that instantly comes to mind that goes toe to toe with March 8th, 1994 is 1966 Michigan. So, I mean, we really have the best stuff, and a lot of people focus on that 1966, but it's as if nobody really knows about 1994. Right. So I when Unsolved Mysteries contacted me, I remember it was in 2020. Yeah, November 2020. And they said, hey, do you have anything for us? I could have very easily said, I've had a lot of strange things happen in my life. Why don't you do a show on me? And based upon the fact that they have previously done shows like that, I could have gone that direction. But I was like, no, this March 1994 thing, this has to get out there because this is a huge deal. And so, so that happened. And so then I'm going to talk about it at the symposium. And if it's as good as I think it is, and if it involves Houghton Lake, maybe it would work at Contact. We'll see.
I would love for you to speak on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because so many people don't even know about it. People that live here don't even know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would love that.
When is the symposium?
It's end of August, like the 26th, 27th, 28th, somewhere in there. And we're really blessed as Michiganders this year because more than half of the people doing the field investigator training are from Michigan. We have the Teschker brothers talking about our new database. Bob Whitworth talking about yellow cards. Actually, it's a presentation that he did at Contact, and he's buffing it out for a training session. These are cases where the witness sounds credible and the information that they're saying sounds correct, but it can't possibly be true. And so what do you do in some of these situations where there is clashing information, or in other cases where like it's a well put together narrative, but the person seems suspicious? Different angles on that. So it's not necessarily like red flag, like I'm throwing this out, but a yellow card, like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And I'm participating in the experiencer investigation part of it. And and Jack Bushong is doing one on photography and radar. So he's all on board for the time being. And I'm going to accept his generous offer to participate as much as possible while he's still got some interest in things.
Wonderful. I so looked forward to meeting him, and I'm still really sad that I missed the Swamp Gas Conference.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Darn it. So going back just a hair, when you talk about, some of this, part of the story sounds very true, and then the experiencer just throws things in there that don't make sense. So speaking just for myself, I can say that when you go through that kind of trauma, and you know this, Bill, you're not thinking correctly. Sometimes the brain, and trying to figure out what the hell really happened, it gets confused. And sometimes we, don't really know how to verbalize what happened because we don't really understand what happened. So I'm wondering how many of those cases that seem really awesome, but the experiencer says something that throws you off or throws in a red flag, should be dug into a little more, do some regression work or something. Do you know what I mean?
So I get you. So I'm not providing a lot of details about the types of cases that we're talking about here, and these are things where the timing is like way off. Like if they say something happened and a month later this other thing happened, but then you're able to figure out that a month later is actually a year or two later. Or if they said something like, and this is exaggerating to make a point, but there is a case that's very much in line with it. So say, okay, I was at home and I was in a mood for to get a Slurpee, so I just drove out to Curtis real quick and came back, Curtis, Michigan, and drove back. And it was weird because like it was only going to take me 5 minutes, but an hour went by, and you're like, "Are you sure? Are you sure you mean Curtis?" like Curtis, Michigan. They're like, yeah, it's got the 2 lakes there, and you're in Houghton Lake, and they're like, yeah, like, and you maybe
So
spoken with this
3-hour
person,
drive.
yeah. So it's like up in the Upper Peninsula, and then came back and like, but like, what there's something really weird there. So and you could even say that in a case of an experiencer, maybe that did happen. Maybe they did drive that, and maybe it did only take him an hour. But then you just gotta say, okay, I'm going to roll the dice on this. I'm going to take a chance. Let's see where this goes. If I take them at their word that that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that type of thing. Now, with regards to some of the things that experiencers report that are, couldn't possibly, be true, but are. A couple things I think of. First of all, is I really love that phrase from Sir William Crookes, the physicist, Nobel Prize winning physicist from the 1800s. And he was into seances. And his scientific buddy says, you're really smart, but you got to stay away from these seancings, because that just can't be possible. That this is this is what you think it is. And he's like, well, I never said it was possible. I only said it was true. So that I think is a big thing that does happen with experiencers, that sort of thing. And Anne Strieber, the late ex-wife of Whitley Strieber, who he loved dearly and still thought of her many years after she passed. One of her things that she said was she would get reports back when like snail mail was a huge thing. Like Whitley Strieber would get stacks and stacks of letters from people talking about their experiences, and she took it upon herself to read a lot of these letters to triage them. And much like Bud Hopkins had with Peter Robbins would do that for Bud Hopkins. So anyway, she, after a while, she said, she goes, some of these things just make too much sense. And she goes, I have a problem with that. She goes, and she says, if it ain't, I think to paraphrase, if it ain't real, if it ain't weird, I don't trust it. So yeah, there has to be some weirdness to it. That I remember back in the 90s, to give an example of something that happened to myself. It was 5:30 in the morning. I got up to go to the bathroom, which was there was in the apartment that I was living in, there was a bathroom just right there. So got up, went to the bathroom, came back and looked, and the clock said 6:29, and it was daylight. Like an hour of light had come into the room. I'm like, and I'm still hearing the toilet like finish its end of its flush, sort of a thing. So I'm like there is no point where time broke. There is, if I was somehow stopped on because I really had to go, and pardon the details or whatever, I just had to go. So like if time had somehow broken on the way to go to the bathroom, like the toilet, my walk to the toilet, I would have, I can't imagine, say, like beings coming in and saying, all right, let's go for an hour. But I'm like, I'm about to burst. I really got to pee, So I can't see that that's possible at all, that the break would have happened on the way to the toilet or during. I think that would have been the strangest at all. And then I flushed, and then I still heard it flushing when I came back. So where could that hour have gone in that minute that it took to do all that? I don't know. It's really weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what if
in the 90s? Yeah.
What if, like, there's different terms, they turned you off, froze you, whatever. I wonder if that kind of stops the bodily functions for a while.
That sounds good.
Like, I'll take it.
Yeah. Sure, why
It
not?
would explain things. Because
Yeah.
no way were you going to hold it for an hour,
Mhm.
but maybe they could have
Yeah.
turned it off.
hmm
I don't know.
Like Han Solo when he was frozen in carbonite probably didn't have to go to the bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. So I know that we don't have a whole lot of time left here, but Mira, you had the very last question that you had for Bill. I really want the answer to.
Hmm.
So, would you ask him that? Do you remember what it is?
Wow, I had lots of different questions. The biggest one on mine is like, so do you think that Michigan is a hot spot and why?
Hotspot for UFOs or
Yeah.
contact to specific.
I would say both.
So, I do feel that we get a lot of really good stuff. Yes, though I also wonder, um, from my lens of MUFON, Michigan was one of the core states that founded at the time the Midwest UFO Network, and that it became Mutual UFO Network as it expanded. And Michigan has always had a very strong team of investigators, uh, a strong public presence, a strong set of like meeting arrangements where people can get together. We've been solid ever since 1969. And I think because of that, a lot of cases come into us that maybe in other states, some states don't even have state directors or they don't have investigators. They have to share investigators or state directors with another state. But our level of organization, I think, draws more stuff to us. Though I will also say that I think Michigan's got some of the biggest things. Like if you look at the Kinross incident in 1953, where a jet fighter seemingly collided with a UFO and then both disappeared. They never found the jet fighter. Or Wurtsmith Air Force Base being one of 4 bases across the U.S. 1975, nuclear weapons in northern Michigan. This base has a UFO visitation at it. And 1966 and 94, which we briefly touched on. And some of the really big, weird one-offs that I get, like there was this one case where it was a married couple and they drove together to work every day. They were driving up US 23 towards the Ann Arbor area and they saw a pyramid over the expressway, not a triangle, a full pyramid that they said had hieroglyphics all over it. And so I'm like, well, that's something, right? So yeah, I do think we get some great ones, though I don't think and we do get about 200 sightings a year in Michigan, which means there's about 20 good ones. By the numbers, by the intensity, I would say we do quite well, though I don't know what would necessarily draw attention here. Some would say the freshwater lakes, or if you're flying in from space, I don't know, where should we land? I don't know. Look at that. It looks like a hand. Let's land there. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
It could be.
So just real quick, do you think humanity is ready for disclosure? Yeah, that's a tough one.
So it's weird because I think the optimistic answer is no, and the pessimistic answer is yes. I think those who are ready for it tend to fall into camps that you kind of wish they weren't in those camps. People who are looking for, a chest thumping, flag waving, defensive posture are possibly ready for a challenge. I also think that people who are so tuned out because they've fallen down a social media rabbit hole at one after another, and they're just completely sort of unfocused and are willing to accept it. They could, they aren't being real critical thinkers about it. And so those who amongst us who are, say, critical, logical, grounded, and would approach this with a serious mindset, I think what's needed is that more good evidence needs to lay the groundwork first, and then they can be onboarded and be accepting of this sort of a thing. I don't think most people are ready yet. I think they'll freak out. Yay!
Thank you. Good
Right.
answer. So I think it's time that we have to wrap
That's
it
it.
up, right, Mary?
That's right. Thank you, Bill, for being on
Yeah.
and sharing your information. Very much.
Seriously.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on. I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Very, very
Can't
soon.
wait. Can't
Bye,
wait.
guys.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody. Have a good night. Love you.